Welcome back to the deep end.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so pull up a chair and get comfortable. Honestly, you might want to dim the lights for this one.
Oh, absolutely. We are going to a very interesting, slightly shadowy place today.
We really are. We're getting into a place where the boundaries between the mundane...
Like literal office paperwork.
Right, like sales territories and memos.
Yeah.
Where that stuff just completely dissolves into the absolute metaphysical bedrock of reality.
It's quite the trip.
It is. I want to set the vibe before we really start. Picture, a late-night campfire chat.
The fire's dying down.
Exactly. The crickets are chirping, and the conversation just naturally shifts from what did you do today to how does the universe actually work?
It's a little spooky.
It's spooky, it's surprisingly funny, and it honestly might change how you handle your next argument at work.
It's deep, but it's also remarkably grounded. I mean, that's the beauty of the material we're covering today. It's not high-flown poetry.
It's gritty.
Very gritty.
But before we jump into the ghost story, well, it isn't really a ghost story, but we'll get to that. I had to get the housekeeping out of the way.
Oh, the mandatory stuff.
Yeah, this is important. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
We are here to learn.
To learn, to explore, and to share. So today, we're doing a deep dive into a very specific slice of the Seth Material.
A fascinating slice.
Yes. We are looking at session 337 of the early sessions, book 8 of the Seth Material.
And we should give the timestamp on that.
Right. This session was recorded on April 26, 1967.
April 1967. Let's just pause on that date for a second.
Yeah.
The summer of love is just around the corner. The Vietnam War is really ramping up significantly.
The cultural tension in America is palpable.
Exactly. And it's a Wednesday evening,
Yeah.
9 p.m.
Just to set the scene inside the room for you, the session that was supposed to happen the previous Monday, so 2 days prior, it didn't happen.
Right.
Jane Roberts, the medium, was just feeling kind of out of sorts, so there's this feeling of anticipation.
They missed a beat.
They missed a beat, and now they're back. And we definitely should explicitly credit the source here. This comes from the Seth Material, and the publisher is the New Awareness Network.
These are the folks keeping these archives available for us to study.
Exactly. So what's our mission today? We have this stack of notes from a trance personality named Seth.
We have predictions about newspaper editors.
We have a mysterious man with a mustache.
And we have a massive philosophical bombshell about war and peace.
That is the core of it. We are going to unpack Seth's take on human hypocrisy.
And it is chilling.
It really is. But it's also funny because he calls us out on things we do every single day.
Specifically, how we think about conflict.
And here's the teaser, the central paradox we're going to explore today. Why fighting for peace might actually be the very thing causing war.
It sounds so counterintuitive.
It almost sounds offensive to some people.
It does. But when you look at the mechanics Seth lays out, it makes uncomfortable sense.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the vibe in the room that night. It's Wednesday. Jane is back in the chair.
Her husband Rob is there, with his pen and paper.
And Seth starts by explaining why that Monday session was skipped.
Right, and this is fascinating for anyone interested in the mechanics of creativity or consciousness.
Yeah.
Seth says that after a session where the medium, our friend Jane, has been in a deep trance, a portion of the ego becomes leery.
Leery. I love that word choice.
It's perfect.
It's not damaged. It's not broken. It's suspicious.
It's like the ego is a security guard saying, whoa, 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 we went too deep last time. I don't know if I want to let you back in there.
Exactly. It's a protective mechanism. Seth explains that the ego essentially puts up a block.
It's a very humanizing moment for the medium. It shows that this isn't just a machine turning on and off.
There's a biological
and psychological toll to this kind of work. Jane isn't a robot. She has a conscious mind that gets spooked by its own depth.
It really makes Jane feel more real to me. She's not just a conduit. She's a person who gets tired and gets leery.
But then, and this is the part that I find hilarious, Seth just pivots.
Hard pivot.
He goes from this deep psychological insight regarding the nature of the ego straight into office gossip.
It is the most jarring, wonderful transition. He starts validating data he gave in a previous session about personnel changes at a newspaper.
Imagine this. You are speaking to an entity from another dimension.
Right.
A consciousness that claims to be outside of time and space. He has the secrets of the universe at his fingertips.
And he wants to talk about the advertising department.
It is brilliant, though. Seth confirms that there will be a reshuffling. He mentions changes in the business department, the advertising department, and a specific editorial change.
He even talks about correspondence in nearby areas being affected. I have to play devil's advocate here, though. Why does he do this?
You mean why focus on the mundane?
Yeah. Is he just showing off? Like, look at me, I can read the interoffice memos.
It's about validation. Remember, Rob and Jane are naturally skeptical people.
They really are.
If Seth just came through and spoke about love and light and the cosmos, that's unprovable. It's poetic, but unprovable.
Ah, I see.
By cracking the boring, mundane details of their daily lives, the stuff that stresses them out at work, he's proving a point. He's saying, I am here, I am watching, I see your reality in high definition.
Okay, so it acts as an evidentiary anchor.
Exactly.
But then we get to the actual drama, the Philip situation. Now, for context for you listening, Philip is the name Seth uses for John Bradley.
Who is one of the people involved in these sessions.
Right, and there was a prediction that Philip was going to have his sales territory changed, specifically cutting out Elmira and adding small Pennsylvania towns.
Which, for a salesman or anyone in that line of work, is a massive deal.
Oh, yeah. That's your livelihood. That's your commute.
That's gas money.
But here's the twist. In this session, Seth says, and I want to make sure I get this right, it is possible that the changes Philip has been told will not occur.
Wait, so he was told by his boss that they would happen?
But Seth says they might not.
Yes. Seth suggests that Philip was told these changes were coming for other reasons.
Oh, the intrigue. That sounds like classic toxic office politics.
Absolutely.
Management tells you something is happening just to see how you react, or to manipulate a situation, or to get you to quit, but they never actually intended to go through with it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is that Seth is aware of the intention behind the management's decision.
He's looking right at the deception.
Or the strategy involved. He's saying, don't panic yet, Philip. The reality isn't set in stone because the intent isn't pure.
That is wild. It implies that these spirits or this higher consciousness is basically reading the corporate emails before they're even sent.
Or reading the minds of the managers.
It makes you paranoid. If I'm a manager lying to my employee, is Seth watching me?
Well, it highlights the interconnectedness of minds. If telepathy is real, which Seth implies is the baseline of communication, then secrets don't really exist. The manager thinks he's keeping a secret strategy, but the information is already out there in the ether.
And then, just to sprinkle a little more specific flavoring on top, Seth drops this totally random detail.
The mustache guy.
Yes. He mentions a man with balding, very dark hair, dark brows, who has a mustache.
And says he belongs to Pat Norelli's family.
It's so specific. Balding, dark hair, mustache. It's like he's looking at a photograph. Why include that?
Again, it serves as an anchor. When you're dealing with high-concept metaphysics, which we are about to get into.
It's very heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff about war and collective consciousness. You need these grounded, verifiable details to keep the listeners tethered to reality.
It proves he's not just riffing.
Right. He's seeing specific people.
It's that weirdly grounded vibe we talked about. It's not angels playing harps. It's mustaches and sales territories in Pennsylvania.
But all of this, the office gossip, the personnel changes, the mustache, it's all just a prelude.
The warm-up act.
It's the warm-up act for the real lecture.
Right. The main event. And this is where things get really interesting and honestly, a little uncomfortable.
It starts with an incident. The previous evening, before this session, John Bradley, who we know as Philip, and Bill Gallagher had a lively argument.
I love how Seth calls it lively. That is diplomatic code for loud, angry, and probably alcohol-fueled.
It was. And the subject was war.
Now, remember, this is April 1967.
The Vietnam War is raging.
Tensions are high. Arguing about war was the national pastime.
So you have these two guys probably sitting in the living room shouting about peace, right?
I assume they were taking the moral high ground.
Essentially, yes. They were debating the morality of it. And Seth, well, he is not impressed.
No, he is not. He calls the episode aggressively disrupting.
He says, and this is key, symbolically, you see, and beneath it all, both men showed characteristics that under different circumstances could have led them into violence for the sake of their beliefs.
Whoa, let's just pause on that. That is a heavy accusation.
It really is.
He's telling two guys who are ostensibly arguing against war that they're displaying the characteristics of war makers.
That is the aha moment. It's the core irony of the whole session. Seth is stripping away the topic of the argument and looking solely at the energy of the argument.
But hold on, I have to push back here. Because if I see something terrible happening, like the Vietnam War or any injustice, Isn't it appropriate to be angry?
It's a natural reaction.
Isn't righteous anger a thing? If I'm just sitting there smiling, aren't I complicit?
That is the million-dollar question, and Seth does address it. But his point is that if your righteous anger contains the same vibration of
The
violence,
same frequency.
yes, the same desire to crush the opposition, the same lack of listening as the warmonger, then energetically, you are the same.
You're just wearing a different jersey.
Exactly.
There is a quote here from the source material that we just have to read. It's absolutely brutal in its honesty.
Yes, this is straight from the session. Seth says, to argue aggressively that war is wrong is ironic stupidity. For such an individual, already displays those characteristics that lead to war.
Ironic stupidity. Seth is not mincing words tonight.
He's really not. And think about how applicable that is today. Scroll through any social media feed.
Oh, don't even get me started.
You see people who believe they are on the side of good or peace or justice, but the venom, the vitriol, the absolute aggression they unleash on anyone who disagrees.
Seth would say that is the war.
That is the war.
That's a hard pill to swallow because we feel righteous. We feel like, I'm angry because I care. But Seth is saying that a belief must not possess the believer.
Exactly. If your belief in peace possesses you to the point where you become aggressive, you have lost the plot. You have become the thing you hate.
So what does this mean for action? Because I can hear you listening right now thinking, okay, so I should just shut up. Is silence the answer?
Seth addresses this directly. He asks if restraint is cowardly. And he says, it might be cowardly.
Okay, so he's not letting us off the hook. You can't just stay silent because you're scared of confrontation.
Correct. But he says, to refrain from argument while simultaneously and deliberately forcing thoughts or pictures of peace represents a positive action.
Key word there is action. It's internal action. Forcing thoughts or pictures of peace.
Yes, but here is the problem, and Seth points this out with almost a sigh. He notes that the intensity of our peaceful thoughts rarely matches the intensity of our bitterness.
That is so true. Think about how easy it is to be angry.
It's effortless.
Anger is like a flash fire. It's hot, it's consuming, it's high energy. Sitting there and thinking peaceful thoughts feels weak.
It feels passive.
It feels like doing nothing.
But Seth argues it is actually more powerful if you can match the intensity. Anger is a strong broadcast signal. Peace is often a weak signal because we don't put the same emotional horsepower behind it.
We think peace is calm, so we project it calmly.
Exactly. Seth is saying you need to project peace aggressively. Well, maybe not aggressively, but with intense focus.
So the challenge is to make your desire for peace as loud, psychically speaking, as your desire to punch the other guy in the face.
Crudely put, but yes, that is the metaphysical challenge. Can you hold a vision of peace with the same white-hot intensity that a soldier holds a vision of the enemy?
Now this leads us right into the really spooky part, the metaphysics of war. Because Seth drops a concept here that genuinely makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
This is where we go from psychology to straight-up reality creation. Seth talks about a short-circuiting process.
Explain that. What does he mean by short-circuiting?
Think of it like an electrical grid. He says when you hate war too much, when you fear it so intensely, you actually short-circuit your desire for peace.
You blow the fuse.
You blow the fuse. The energy gets blocked and distorted. You end up feeding the war.
Because you're focusing on the war?
Precisely. And Seth says something here that challenges our entire linear view of history.
Oh, this is the quote.
Yes. He says, before the beginning of any war, subconsciously, each individual knows not only that a war will occur, but its precise outcome.
Wait, rewind. We know the outcome before it starts.
Subconsciously. He says, battles, like other physical acts, exist first in the mental realm.
So D-Day, Waterloo, Gettysburg, those weren't just physical events involving troops and geography. They were psychic agreements.
They were mental events that eventually solidified into physical reality.
Yeah.
The physical war is just the tail end of the comet.
The real event happened in the collective mind of humanity first.
We agree to it.
That is heavy. It implies a collective responsibility that is almost terrifying. It means we aren't just victims of politicians or generals.
We are co-creators of the conflict. Seth is very big on removing the idea of victimhood.
Right.
He says all of your physical activities, from the political to the economic, have their origin in mental existence. There are no accidents.
He mentions this character H at the paper. We don't know who H is, but Seth uses him as an example of this exact mechanism.
Right. He says H attracts negative influences through poor habits and actually amplifies them.
Like a repeater station for bad vibes.
Exactly. He projects them outward in a highly magnified manner. Seth says this takes much of his energy. Being a negativity amplifier is exhausting.
I think we all know an H, someone who takes a bad situation and just cranks the volume up to 11.
Oh, definitely.
The person in the office who turns a missed deadline into an absolute catastrophe.
And Seth is using H as a microcosm for the macro problem. Just as H amplifies negativity in the office, humanity amplifies negativity on the global stage, creating war.
It's the exact same mechanism, just at a different scale.
Which brings us to the mechanism of attraction.
We've all heard of the law of attraction, The Secret, all that stuff.
Sure.
But Seth was talking about this in 1967, and he's very specific about a nuance that most people miss.
The nuance is critical. The rule is concentration. Seth says desire attracts, but fear also attracts.
I think people forget the second half of that sentence. We think, oh, if I don't want it, I won't get it.
No. The universe, or your subconscious, doesn't hear I don't want. It just sees the image you are holding.
Right.
If you are holding an image of war, even if you are terrified of it, you are concentrating on war. You are calling it in.
So fear of war is actually a magnet for war.
Yes. Severe fear is highly dangerous in this context. It's a form of intense prayer for the thing you don't want.
That's a chilling way to put it, praying for what you don't want. So what is the solution? How do you stop a war if you can't fear it and you can't aggressively argue against it? It feels like a trap.
You have to flip the polarity. Seth says the approach should be love of peace, not fear of war.
It sounds like a semantic trick, but it's a fundamental shift in focus.
It's not just semantics, it's engineering. He gives other examples. Not fear of poverty, but concentration upon the unlimited supplies available.
Okay.
Not fear of ill health, but concentration upon the enjoyment of good health.
This is radical responsibility. It means you can't just be anti-something. Being anti creates a vacuum that the thing fills. You have to be pro the opposite.
You have to build the new reality in your mind, rather than just tearing down the old one.
Yeah.
Because if you focus on tearing down the old one, you're still focused on the old one.
So you're still giving it your energy.
Exactly.
You know, this transitions perfectly into the last segment of the session where Seth applies this exact same logic to the human body. Because really, illness is just a war inside the body, right?
That's a great connection.
Yeah.
Seth pivots to discussing our friend, likely Rob, or someone close to them, who was dealing with some symptoms.
And Seth says this friend is losing the symptoms because why?
Because he is learning to take his concentration away from them.
That is so hard to do. When you're sick or something hurts, all you want to do is think about it.
Of course.
You Google it, you poke it, you worry about it, you check if it's still there.
And Seth says attention prolongs them.
Ooh, that hits close to home.
By staring at the symptom, you are feeding it energy. You are validating its existence. You are saying you are here and you are important.
So what's the technique? How do you not think about a pink elephant? If I tell you don't think about your headache, all you think about is the headache.
Seth suggests distraction. But not just casual distraction like mindlessly watching TV. He suggests intense concentration, even upon an object or an imagined journey.
An imagined journey.
Yes, anything that is intense and diverting. You have to engage the mind so fully in something else that the symptom is starved of attention.
It's like magic, but it's practical magic.
It's energy management. Think about it. If you have 100 units of energy and you give 90 to your pain or your fear of war, those things grow.
They flourish.
If you divert that 90 units to an imagined landscape or a feeling of peace, the pain and the war wither on the vine. They have no fuel.
This totally validates the earlier point about the argument between John and Bill. If they had stopped arguing about war and instead intensely concentrated on a shared vision of a peaceful world, or even just a peaceful evening in that living room,
the outcome would have been psychically different. They would have contributed to the solution instead of reinforcing the problem.
It's amazing how consistent the philosophy is across all these topics. Whether it's office gossip, global warfare, or a headache, the rule is exactly the same. You get what you concentrate on.
And you cannot short-circuit the system by fearing the outcome. Fear is just desire in a Halloween costume. It still pulls things toward you.
Fear is desire in a Halloween costume. I am stealing that. That is so good.
It's all yours.
So let's wrap this up. What have we actually learned today from session 337?
Well, first we learned that office politics apparently exist on the spiritual plane.
Right.
So be careful what you say near the water cooler. The spirits are listening.
Second, screaming for peace is an act of war. If you're aggressive in your pacifism, you're just adding to the pile of global aggression.
Third, fear is a magnet. Just like desire. If you obsess over what you're afraid of, you are literally inviting it in for dinner.
And finally, to fix a problem, whether it's global thermonuclear war or just a nagging cough, you have to look away. You have to shift your focus to the solution, not the issue.
Starve the problem, feed the solution.
It's a simple mechanic, but incredibly difficult to master. It requires constant vigilance over your own thoughts.
It really does. It makes you realize that your mind is the only territory you truly have control over.
And even that territory requires a lot of maintenance.
So much maintenance.
If you found this as fascinating as we did, you need to go to the source. Do not just take our word for it. We are just two people talking by a digital campfire.
Absolutely. Study the Seth Material books. There are volumes of this stuff, and it only gets deeper the further you go. You can visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore.
The address is sethcenter.com/the early sessions. Go there, get the books, support the people preserving this knowledge.
It is a rabbit hole worth going down.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final thought, a little provocation for your next commute or your next shower.
Let's hear it.
Seth said that subconsciously we know the outcome of every war before it starts. We agree to it. So my question to you is this. If we subconsciously know the outcome of every war before it starts, what are we collectively agreeing to right now in our own silences?
That is a lingering question. What futures are we signing off on without even realizing it?
Think about that. And maybe, just maybe, try to concentrate on something beautiful today.
Couldn't hurt.
Thanks for listening. See you in the next deep dive.
Take care.